Hey guys, it's Nicole. Today I wanted to talk to you about nutrition and what the healthiest diet is. There's so much controversy about different diets and what people should be eating. There's so many studies that come out that say, things like eggs are bad, or caffeine is bad, or meat is bad, or, dairy, and don't eat this, don't eat beans, don't eat grains. It's enough to make your head spin. And I've been studying nutrition for a really long time, about 18 years, and now I'm to the point where I'm just sick and tired of the debates, because people are arguing and actually saying really hostile things towards each other just about food. It's kind of stupid, actually. I've been on YouTube for like 9 years, and I watch YouTube videos a lot. I watch hundreds of thousands of YouTube videos, most of them about nutrition. And it's hilarious to see the arguments people have in the comment section about, veganism or eating meat or, paleo or whatever. It's so ridiculous. Like, just let people live the way they want to live. But anyway, I want to talk to you about what my opinion is of the healthiest diet. Now, I've eaten probably every diet that's out there. Paleo, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, you name it, I've tried. Raw vegan, just every diet you could possibly think of, I've tried. And I haven't really necessarily felt different on any one diet, but, there's a lot to go through when it comes to things like studies. And, they do large scale studies on lots of people, and then they come to this conclusion that, let's say something like, do eggs increase your cholesterol? And I did a whole video on this, and I've done videos on dairy and other types of diet. No one has really come to a conclusion about which diet is the healthiest diet. And I finally figured out why nobody can come to a final conclusion of what is the best diet for everybody. And that conclusion is everybody is different. And I've said this before in other videos that I've done. A vegan diet might not work for some people. Vegans are going to be really mad about that, but that's just the way it is. Are you going to put your health at risk and risk your life just to stay on a diet that you think is morally superior to others? That's silly. I'm all for animal welfare and humanely treating animals. Of course, the way they treat animals in slaughterhouses is insanely inhumane and torturous, and it makes me sick. But, sometimes some people do need to eat meat, and I struggle with the guilt from that sometimes. But, that's why my name on here is semi-veg, because I'm a semi-vegan, semi-vegetarian. I don't eat meat on a regular basis at all. I only have it, maybe once every couple months or something like that, and it has to be organic and grass-fed, pasture-raised, humanely raised, that sort of thing. But even when I do eat it, I still do feel a pang of guilt, because an animal died so that I could eat this meal, and I can't help it. I still feel guilty about it. But, I guess I could go fully vegetarian. And I have, like I said, I've gone without meat for years and years at a time. But sometimes I don't feel my best. So anyway, that's what this video is going to be about. So should we eat meat or not? Well, that's up to you. There are a lot of studies that claim that people who are vegan get less cancer, get less heart disease, and other diseases and conditions. And that that may be true, and if that's something that you want to try, absolutely try that. The problem with some of those studies is that they don't take into the account the type of meat people eat. They take really healthy vegans and then they compare them to people who eat a crappy standard American diet with junk food in general with meat. You can't, that's not a fair comparison. I think they should do a study on people who eat a completely clean paleo diet, and I mean really clean, like only grass-fed, no junk food whatsoever, and then compare that to a vegan diet and do a large-scale study. Now that would be, more comprehensive and more accurate, I think. But, I'm not in charge of scientific studies, unfortunately. But anyway, I think that we've all come to a conclusion that we can all agree on a few things, and I want to start with those. The first thing is, of course, nobody should be eating, quote, junk food like pastries and cookies and Pop-Tarts and potato chips and French fries and those sorts of foods. We can all agree those aren't healthy, and we should all be eating more fruits and vegetables. Nobody is going to disagree that we should all be eating lots of fruits and vegetables. Now, where people start to disagree is where you get into foods like soy and dairy and, red meat and eggs and beans and grains, and even nuts and seeds and nightshade vegetables, or fruits actually. Some people have problems with nightshades because they could cause inflammation, and people who have diseases like arthritis actually do better if they stay away from nightshades, and nightshades include things like tomatoes, eggplants, potatoes, bell peppers. But like I said, everybody is different. If you don't have an autoimmune disease, these foods are actually really healthy for you. So you need to find out what works for you. You need to find out what your metabolic type is, how your body responds to certain things. There's a huge controversy right now about gluten. Most articles you'll read will say things like, gluten-free diets are useless unless you have celiac. And okay, that's fine, but there are people who are sensitive to gluten, may not show up on a test. Every time they eat it, they get, some sort of rash or a stuffy nose or a stomach ache. Well, obviously, these people shouldn't be eating gluten if they're having some sort of reaction to it. So we can all agree that everybody should be eating fruits and vegetables. There's no controversy about those types of foods. So I want to give you my own conclusion of what the healthiest diet is. Like I told you before, I've been studying nutrition and all of the arguments that have gone back and forth for about 18, 19 years now. And I have come to the conclusion that you probably should stay away from gluten if you have a susceptibility to autoimmune diseases. Foods like wheat are mutated because of agricultural selection. Modern wheat actually has 21 to 23 chromosomes, whereas ancestral wheat back in biblical days had only 7. Now this modification affects the protein structures that can act as a toxin, and they're not really completely digested by the human body. These toxins act in the intestines too, modifying the intestinal flora and creating a putrefaction flora that affects the intestinal wall and then creates even more toxins. In our gut, we have the lining of our small intestines. We have little villi, and in between those, they're called tight junctions. And the problem is these little particles of undigested food get in between those, and they get into the bloodstream, and this causes an autoimmune reaction. So if you're susceptible, if your parents or your autoimmune diseases run in your family, you really should stay away from these, gluten-containing grains. Things like bulgur, couscous, spelt, kamut. And then corn is also dangerous for the same reasons as wheat. The original plant measured 1/2 meter, whereas the modern plant measures 3 meters high. So barley, rye, anything from the wheat family really need to be excluded from the diet. Rice is actually accepted. It's basically remained in its wild prehistoric form for all these, hundreds of years, and the clinical experience proves that it's rarely harmful. And then buckwheat is actually considered okay and tolerated by most people. Dairy products are very nutritious for a baby calf. They're not intended for humans. And I know that it's so difficult to give up cheese, ice cream, and cottage cheese. I've always loved cottage cheese and yogurt. But they have a lot of good dairy-free alternatives nowadays for these foods. The problem is humans just can't digest milk. They can only digest milk from their own species. The main protein from milk, which is casein, is very hard to digest completely by humans, creating the problems I mentioned before. Now, meat is very controversial, like I said. I don't even really know if I should go into it. I think it's okay as long as it's grass-fed, pasture-raised, humanely treated, organic. But then you have to deal with the whole ethical, moral part of eating meat, and that's where I still struggle. I'm an animal lover, and I really have a tough time buying it. So, if you feel that way, absolutely don't eat meat. But if you do eat meat, eat it, of course, pasture-raised and grass-fed and humane. And then there's also the way you cook meat is extraordinarily important. Most people like to sear it or barbecue it or brown it and get it really crispy, and I understand that tastes better, of course, but it's not healthy. Those burnt bits create something called acrylamide, and acrylamide is very highly toxic. I've talked about this before in other videos. It's a carcinogen, so that means it contributes to cancer. So if you're going to eat meat, you should really pay attention to the way you're cooking it. It should always be cooked at a very low temperature. Poaching is actually the best way to cook meat, very slowly, very gently, in some water in a pan so that no browning occurs. There's something called the Maillard reaction, and it's a chemical reaction between amino acids and reducing sugars, and it gives food its distinctive flavor. It's named after a French chemist, Louis Camille Maillard, who first described it in 1912 while attempting to reproduce biological protein synthesis. So the Maillard reaction is basically the browning that you get whenever you cook anything, be it, French fries or meat or anything that gets brown. That's the Maillard reaction, and that's what's really toxic to the body. So the other foods that are really controversial are beans and grains. Now this has caused me so much angst because I've read so much about, phytates and lectins in these foods that cause inflammation, and again, people with autoimmune diseases should stay away from these foods. And my husband and I both have an autoimmune disease. I've never talked about this on my channel. Only a very small handful of people know about my autoimmune disease, and I'll probably do a video about it. Autoimmune diseases run in my family. My cousin actually has celiac, so now I'm really concerned about my children. I don't feed my children any gluten. Now, they do eat beans and gluten-free grains, but my son is a vegetarian. He doesn't like the taste of meat. He won't eat it at all, no matter what. So feeding him a paleo diet is just not really going to work. I mean, there are vegetarian paleo diets, but it's so hard. And like I said, I don't eat meat anyway, but not very often at least. But so if you have autoimmune diseases in your family, it might be a good idea to try to stay away from nightshades, beans, and grains. Now, beans are actually really healthy, and so are things like quinoa and buckwheat and rice and things like that. But I think it's the way you prepare it as well. You really need to soak the beans, and that gets rid of a lot of these anti-nutrients. Soak your grains, sprout them actually is the best way. Like if you're going to make lentils, I always buy dried lentils, and then I soak them and I sprout them for a few days. And then you can actually steam them lightly and eat them like that, and that gets rid of a lot of those anti-nutrients like the phytates and the lectins, and that lowers the amount of inflammation when you eat those foods. It depends on what kind of body you have, and if you have a propensity towards certain types of diseases, you're going to go towards certain diets. Because we've all heard people say, oh, the vegan diet saved my life, or oh, the paleo diet saved my life. Well, I mean, they can't both be right? Well, yeah, they actually can, because for that person, the vegan diet was best for them. For the other person, the paleo diet was best for them. I've read about people who have had really debilitating autoimmune diseases like lupus, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, hypothyroidism, you know, lots of different autoimmune diseases out there, diabetes, that have been essentially cured or at least put into remission by a paleo diet or an AIP diet, which is an autoimmune protocol diet. Oh God, I've tried that diet. That's the hardest diet to be on. All you can eat is meat and vegetables and fruit, and you can't have nightshades. You can't have nuts, seeds, eggs, beans, grains. It's the hardest diet to be on ever, because I don't like to eat a lot of meat anyway, and it was like all I was eating was meat and vegetables. It was so boring and so restrictive, and it was horrible. But a lot of people have had good luck on that diet who have autoimmune diseases. The other really controversial food is oils. You know, a lot of vegans say oil is horrible for you. You should never eat oil. It, you know, ruins your arteries. Oh boy, I've done a lot of research on that too, and a lot of doctors say oil is great for you, you know, certain types of oil. You should never heat oil, except for maybe like a saturated oil like ghee or coconut oil, because these oils are high in saturated fats, and the molecular structure of a saturated fat is straight, whereas a polyunsaturated fat is bent. There's a kink in it so that they're less stable at high temperatures. And so saturated fats are more stable at high temperatures. So if you're going to eat oil, small amounts, don't heat it unless it's saturated. You know, there you go. But I eat olive oil cold in salad dressings, flax oil cold, avocado oil. Then if I cook anything, it's with ghee or coconut oil. So don't get caught up in, you know, which diet should I do, because it just creates too much stress. Whatever happened to balance? I mean, you know, and I'm not talking about the food pyramid, because the food pyramid, in my opinion, is not balanced. You've got, you know, 9 to 11 servings of bread or grains. Like, that's ridiculous. That's not balanced. My ideal diet should just be, you know, you should choose whether or not you want to eat, you know, animal products. That's a decision you need to make for yourself, whether it be moral reasons, ethical, health, you know, you do your own research about that. But when it comes to macros, you know, protein, carbohydrates, and fats, it should just be a balance of everything instead of being so restricted about everything. Of course, you know, I guess I'm a hypocrite because I have a pretty strict diet, but it should mostly be about balance, because that's what we're all striving for in our lives, isn't it? You know, we just want balance. We don't want to be doing crazy things all the time. So, you know, it's kind of like a process that you have to go through in order to figure out which diet works for you. But there are some universal, you know, sort of rules that everybody should maybe be following. You know, like I said, of course, we all agree fruits and vegetables, everybody should be eating those. So there isn't one specific healthy diet that we should all be following. I think it's really individual. And that's why these studies are so, you know, they give such mixed results, because everybody's going to be different. Some diets work great for some people, some diets work really poorly for this, you know, different people. So you have to find what works for you. So in conclusion, focus on whole foods. We keep hearing that. Obviously, that's the way to go. Drink plenty of water, get plenty of sleep, you know, meditate, exercise, eat healthy. That's just, you know, that's the main advice that I have for you in this video. It's kind of what we've been hearing for years. It's nothing new. So thanks so much for watching this video. If you like videos like this, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.